Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Harmony Inspired Health Podcast. Today, we are diving into the fascinating world of sound healing with two incredible guests, Jessica Cross and Julie.
Afsahi. You've got it.
Afsahi. I was like, I always ask my guests, how do you pronounce your name before I go on? And I was like, oh, damn it. Afsahi. So Jessica Cross and Julie Afsahi, both are sound healing practitioners, educators, and yoga instructors with a deep passion for helping others through vibrational wellness. Together, they've co-authored Seasons of Sound, a practical guide to sound healing and self-care. And today, we're going to be focusing on the science behind sound healing, its benefits, and how it can be incorporated into your wellness routine. So, if you are curious about how sound can be a tool for your personal transformation, then you are in a treat today because we have not only one, but two experts here to share all things sound. So, welcome to the podcast, ladies.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
having
much for
us. We're
having
so
us.
happy.
Welcome. So, I want to start by asking, how did you guys meet?
Oh, this is a fun story, and I guess we probably each tell it differently too. So, this is Jessica speaking. If you're listening, and maybe you should ask Julie too, her take on this. But Julie owns a beautiful studio just outside of Austin, Texas, called Soul Strong Yoga, and it is an incredible community that I wandered in a few days after she opened, or a few weeks after she opened, and took a class and knew that I was supposed to be in those hallowed halls of Soul Strong Yoga, and I became one of the teachers there. And I knew immediately that Julie was going to be a dear friend of mine, just based on her fun, loving personality, and her love for yoga, her passion for sound healing. We just became fast friends, and we've since collaborated on many a thing. Teacher trainings, sound healing trainings, obviously our book Seasons of Sound. The list goes on, and the inspiration continues. So who knows what else we'll collaborate on? But we found each other in the yoga community, and it's just continued to blossom.
I love friendships like that. It's so beautiful when you have people in the same space where you can collaborate because collaboration is such a beautiful thing, bringing like two sources of wisdom together. Next year, I am writing my book. I'm super excited for, but I just wanted to wait till I got my master's out of the way, which finally I have, so I can move on. But what's it like collaborating on a book together? How did that go?
Yeah, I think this is Julie, and we've worked on so many projects together previously, and I think more importantly, our sense of humor is so well aligned that it worked beautifully. So I think in a lot of situations, co-authoring a book can be incredibly stressful, and there were definitely stressful times. But I believe because we had worked on so many previous trainings together and development of those trainings, and we had a lot of the content already created from years of teaching sound healing and teaching yoga, it worked out very, very, very well. And I think, in a lot of situations, people say opposites can make good partnerships, but I think in Jessica and I's case, we're actually very similar in a lot of ways. So we like tasks and to-do lists. And so we were and she's a previous project manager. So for us, it worked really, really well. But it was so much fun. And I think for both of us, having this book written really was just a gateway to more ideas. So we're really, we had a call today where we were just kind of dreaming together about what we want to do next.
I love that. I also love sound healing. It is magic. I'm also a yoga teacher and I have crystal sound healing bowls at home. I would not call myself a sound healer because I haven't really dived deep into the science behind it. I kind of just, what would you call it, like free reign, do my own little mix and match of all the sounds. But I would love to find out more about this, and I'm sure our audience who may be listening, who are like avid sound healers, love sound healing, or are hearing about this for the first time, I still want to go over what sound healing is and how it works on the body and mind from both a scientific and a spiritual perspective.
Oh, such a good question, and one that we love to nerd out about. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to write the book, to help add additional voices into the sound healing community, especially as we were researching this book and preparing for it, we found it was very male dominated industry, and in terms of actually authorship and teaching, and we felt very passionate about lending our voices. So thank you for asking us for our take on it. We'll talk a little bit about modern sound healing, and then also, of course, there's the roots and the historical roots in sound. But modern sound healing, in a nutshell, we really like to call it a passive listening experience. Where a participant is in a comfortable position, be it reclined, seated, and there is a practitioner who is sharing sound in some sort of form. So often we see, just like you have at home, the crystal singing bowls. Sometimes we also see other instruments, like Julie's favorite, the gong. There are so many different instruments too that are continuing to come forward into the modern sound healing world, that are adding additional sounds and pieces of relaxation, like chimes, drums, and also there's more roots in some of those more ancient instruments versus the crystal singing bowls. As much as we would love to know that they're, or think that they're ancient, they're quite a modern invention, but so powerful one at that. And when you're in this sound healing experience, the sound waves are ideally played in a very calm, predictable manner. And we say calm and predictable because we are trying to connect with the parasympathetic nervous system part of the autonomic nervous system, which helps us tap into, if we have a bunch of yoga teachers, Ayurvedic practitioners, I'm sure we're all familiar with the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So you're saying, I got this, Jess. But we're using sound healing as yet another tool for us to connect in with that rest and digest state, because in the modern world, we spend so much on the other side, our sympathetic nervous system. And this is just yet another tool in our kit for our asana practice, the Ayurvedic practices, our meditation practices. This is just another way for us to tap into that, and maybe a doorway for some people who are interested in reaching those deeper states, but maybe kind of haven't found their modality just yet. So I'm sure Julie has some stuff to add too, so I'll let her.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica. Yeah, recently, as Jessica and I are preparing for an upcoming training in a couple of weeks, we've been doing kind of our own literature review of research on sound healing and looking at what's available. And, unfortunately, also sound healing, there's no like big pharmaceutical company invested in sound healing. So unfortunately the funding is lacking, but there are definitely some emerging research studies coming out. And because I think there is a strong interest in meditation and mindfulness, it does get some funding. Also, we see smaller sound healer researchers running like small qualitative studies amongst their own community with like 30, 40 participants, doing pre and post surveys around stress, perhaps feelings of anxiety. We're seeing like those types of self-reported studies come out. And then also, I think maybe 8 years ago or so, Harvard did a study on the Tibetan singing bowls, but essentially what we're seeing over and over again is this idea of entrainment, that when a person is listening to these kind of slower paced single tones or binaural tones, a few different things happen in the body. So one is the heart rate slows, blood pressure decreases, and then we start to see more of that parasympathetic response, which is a domino effect that we know, right? So when you have more opportunities to unwind, de-stress, then we can probably assume that there's going to be, because of lower cortisol levels, an opportunity for, rejuvenation and restoration. There's probably going to be effects down the road if you make sound healing part of your practice. So with all that said, it's still a nascent field, emerging research. But I'll just mention one study real quick that I saw recently that I thought was really great. It was mentioned in the New York Times. They referred to this study, and that's where I first saw it, was in this New York Times article, but about how adding in layers of singing bowls can help people who struggle with silent meditation. So we know meditation has all of this neuroscience behind it that really started in the 1990s. And now, like, the VA in the US, working with veterans and military population, is getting federal funding, looking into mindfulness and meditation for post-traumatic stress disorder and all sorts of things. But the idea that by using these sound healing tools can help people to bridge that gap and to enter a meditative state is also really exciting. So we're looking at it as like a complementary tool that we can use to help people enter a meditative state, because for a lot of people, silence can be dysregulating. So that's something too we talk about in Seasons of Sound, is really your perception, your experience, and it's a subjective experience. So you kind of have to find sounds that, for lack of a better word, like kind of vibe with you, so that you're drawn to, that you feel comfortable with. Because some folks, this crystal singing bowls is not for them. They feel a little bit dysregulated, and that's why we offer lots of different sound healing tools as well.
Yeah, and more to your point on the research with these sort of complementary alternative medicines, however you want to word it. I did a podcast episode a few weeks back just explaining the differences and also how to bridge the gap between Eastern and Western medicine. And it is hard to get good research on the areas that we're in, because it is a much harder to apply a placebo effect. And so, yes, we can do case studies and peer review and all of those type of things, which, like you said, is probably more of a subjective overview. But to actually have qualitative data on placebo effect, I mean, you can do it with a bit like with meditation. There's been a lot of studies because you're able to hook people up to their monitors and test their brain waves and all of that. But when it comes to things like lifestyle, diet, sound healing, I mean, the sound's either there or it's not. So it's hard to, do a placebo of that, I guess. And like you said, the vibrational match for everybody is different, because we are a vibration. So our vibrational matches might be different to the next person. I know for me, if I'm feeling quite anxious or stressed and I just start the day that way, when I'm getting ready, I'll always play really beautiful, relaxing music, as opposed to the days where I feel like, yeah, I'm pumped up, it'll be like high vibe music or a podcast because I'm like getting fired up. But yes, there's definitely been days, especially when I was studying, where I had to really play beautiful sort of low, like vibrational frequency sounds, just to like help me get into my body and my breath and calm that parasympathetic. So I know you touched on a few of these, but what are some of the key benefits of sound healing, and how does it differ from other forms of meditation or wellness practices that you have seen?
This is a great question. I think you actually, in your example just now, touched on, a few of them, using sound as a way for us to kind of tap into what's going on with ourselves in the moment. So you listed a few beautiful examples. So you were feeling really stressed as you were studying for your master's, which, congratulations, by the way, that's amazing. you are finding benefit by listening to slower, calmer, more predictable, beautiful music as a way to kind of tap back in. And then on the flip side, knowing that you're looking for a more energetic approach to your day, maybe you're like feeding your mind a little bit with a podcast or listening to some upbeat music to kind of get yourself pumped up for whatever you had ahead. I think that's one of the beautiful things about sound is it can be customizable to whatever experience is in front of you. Take an example. If you're a yoga teacher, or maybe you're a meditator or a yoga practitioner, and you happen to have access to either a singing bowl, or maybe you have access to Spotify and you can listen to a soundtrack of some sort, be it singing bowls or gongs or something else in the modern sound healing instrument toolkit. You can kind of experiment on different situations. So if you're wanting to do your own research study on yourself, you could pop in the earbuds when you're, for me, it's traffic. So, being stuck in traffic, you feel like frustrated, you can't get to where you're supposed to be. And me putting on that calming music automatically shifts my state into, well, there's nothing I can do about it. So I might as well stay with my breath. Versus if I was going to listen to, really intense soundtrack of sorts, it's probably going to continue increasing my energy in ways I probably don't need. So I think, a key benefit that is it's customizable. You can check in with yourself day to day on what you're experiencing. And then also, I think it changes over time. Those things that maybe you were a little unsure about, those sounds, you're like, I don't think that's really doing it for me. Sometimes the more awareness you have around that, you kind of come around to different sounds in the future. So I'll maybe Julie's better at speaking of her own experience, but I know Julie is a really good example of this. When she first came to sound healings, she was kind of like, I don't know about the crystal bowls. That's just not really my thing, but I love the gong, absolutely love the gong. And not only, several years of, her being in sound healing spaces, having to listen to me play the crystal bowls as someone who's not really too much into it. She actually said to me recently, she's like, you know what? I think I need some crystal bowls. So things change, right? So, our lifestyles change, our preferences change, which, Julie beautifully mentioned is something we talk about deeply in the book, is, preference changes as well. So I think it's a nice, almost laboratory to explore your own experience using sound. And the benefits are very vast, and they're also in line with, our meditation experiences too. So, having something for your brain to attach to, when we were just talking about silent meditation versus having something for you to enjoy listening to and something to explore in your mind as a part of your meditation, it gives people who aren't not into silent meditation, or it's a little too intense for them at times, it gives people another modality or another doorway into a meditative experience. And the list continues on. It's emotional, physical, mental benefits. There are so many, and I know that we're going to continue to uncover them as the interest continues in sound healing.
And Harmony, to backtrack a bit. So earlier you had said, I don't know if I'm a sound healer and I'm just playing the bowls free range. That's so funny. One good thing about crystal singing bowls too is, as long as you're buying from a reputable manufacturer, and also you can even use a tuning app, because I've seen reviews, for example, in the States on Amazon for crystal singing bowls, and people are like, I bought the bowls and then I use them with my tuner app and they're actually out of tune, and you can't do much to correct a crystal singing bowl that's out of tune. But as long as they're in tune, they're really designed for beginners to be able to play in a healing way. So as long as the person playing the bowls isn't changing between notes too often or over tapping the bowls, but they're playing perhaps chords or playing more slowly and eliminating, because we see a lot of times like new players kind of change bowls frequently or tap bowls frequently, which can be a little bit dysregulating. As long as you're layering in these slower sounds, for a lot of people, that's going to produce a relaxing sonic atmosphere for them, and in which they can calm themselves. And like we were talking about before, because there's no placebo, we don't, some of these newer studies, essentially like in the discussion, they're saying like, well, we think maybe this is why everyone is like not everyone, but whatever, 85% are self-reporting, they're feeling less anxious after the sound bath. There's reasons we think as to why that's happening, but it is happening. And Jess especially has done hundreds and hundreds of sound baths, and there's a reason like it's growing in popularity, and so many people are drawn to it. But all that to say, I think you're doing just fine.
You. And when we talk about the sound baths, like this is what we often think of when we're talking about sound healing, is going down, like going to a community, a yoga studio or some place, laying down and having a sound healing practitioner playing these different instruments. But we can access this, as you mentioned, like by listening to different sounds through Spotify. And we often hear specific sound frequencies like 432 hertz or 528 hertz, binaural beats, lofi beats. Can you explain the significance of these frequencies and how they are used in sound healing for those who are like, well, I don't have any instruments, I don't have access to a sound bath, but I want to listen to sounds, and I've heard that these are the ones to do.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so one starting point we can talk about is from the more of the yogic philosophy standpoint of the chakra system. So if your listeners are familiar with the chakras, you have 7 primary energy centers, and the number 7 aligns very well to the music scale. So for some people, they really love using the chakra system to help guide their sound bath experience. So you might hear lower tones that are going to be more associated with the root chakra, sacral, perhaps a little higher solar plexus. So if you're looking for kind of that deep sense of safety, security, groundedness, perhaps you're drawn more to the lower notes of the scale, but also perhaps you're drawn more to like deeper sounds like a large Tibetan singing bowl or gongs. Whereas we talked before about kind of intention and studying, you went faster moving music or something like that. It's like reminds me of when I was younger and I was studying all the time. I would eat radishes, right, to like kind of stay awake while I was studying. So perhaps if you're, it's similar probably to Ayurvedic thought as well. If you're feeling like more lethargic and things like that, we might work on elevating music, higher frequency sounds. But this is really like a can of worms. Like there's so much there. Also, you might find in your reading, and we talk about it in our book too. So beyond the chakra system, there's solfeggio frequencies, which is based on Gregorian chants. And those, we have a chart in our book where we outline the different solfeggio frequencies that are, again, not research-based, but thought to have different effects on emotional states of the body. So you might see not only songs on Spotify, but different instruments aligned with the solfeggio frequencies as well. So you can look at it from different perspectives. There's cosmic frequencies that are aligned with notes, and we have all of these kind of charted out for people in our book Seasons of Sound, where we align, or we talk about how these different frequencies align. But Jess can, I'm sure, talk specific to the 432 versus 440 hertz for the crystal bowls.
Yeah, yeah, I love this question too, because it's maybe one of the most frequent ones that I hear from folks who are interested in frequency, and also I found just throughout our work that our sound healing community and our other communities find 432 versus 440 out in the world pretty frequently. Like, what is the difference? And this concept of one being better, quote unquote, than the other. So 440 versus 432. 440 is our Western music scale. So if you were to go to an orchestra tonight and listen to a concert, they beforehand, when they're warming up, they would make sure everyone was tuned to 432. Sorry, 440. And 432 is an older tuning that has been resurged in the past few decades an interest because it has this interest as a more spiritual healing frequency. There actually are studies in the music therapy world, and we cite one in our book with regard to 440 music versus 432 music. And again, it's a qualitative study with a smaller sample size, but the surveys were done after each of the different music experiences with a 440 to 432, and there was a slight preference to 432. The different markers were measuring respiratory rates, heart rates. They were also taking in just general enjoyment points, and the ones that varied the most were the enjoyment points. So there wasn't a whole lot of change in respiratory over one to the other. There wasn't a whole lot of change that was notable in heart rate. So it really comes down to preference, which again goes back to why we speak about it in the book. If you feel a difference in a 432 experience, listening to it in your earbuds or playing your 432 singing bowl, and that's important to you, by all means, please enjoy that and share that with others. And if 440 is where you're feeling the benefits and you're noticing, if you're a sound healing practitioner or you're playing a 440 bowl in your yoga class to open and close, and you're getting that feedback that, wow, that was really transformative for me, play it, enjoy it. And I would guess in those two different instances, no one would say one was better than the other. It was, again, a preference. When it does matter is if you're playing in a single setting. So if you're playing, let's say you have a 440 crystal bowl and a 432 crystal bowl, and you play those two together, most people won't be able to tell you why, but they will be able to feel and know the differences because the tuning is slightly different. So that's really when it comes into hand, is if you're actually playing those instruments together.
Mm. And so for like women who will be listening to this and they know that they struggle with stress and anxiety and they want to do something at home to incorporate sound healing. So they want to listen to, a Spotify playlist or something like that, but they don't have a preference yet because they don't know anything about it. What would you suggest that they go to or look up, or how can they start with this experience, their very first starting point?
That's such a good question.
Yeah.
I have to simplify my answer because I'm thinking there's so many options. So just to also lay a little foundational piece too as well, and we talk about this in Seasons of Sound, is that, I mean, you have your voice. So like, I know we haven't talked about that yet, but just humming, if you Google bumblebee breath, that's a beautiful place for anyone to start with a humming practice. Also the voice, of course, in the yoga world, we use for chanting. And so another place might be on Spotify to listen to someone chanting Om. For a lot of people, that can be so healing and calming. So those are, two easy places to start. Also, one thing too, we always talk about is the sounds in nature. Like, we evolved as mammals listening to the sounds of nature. and find that many of these sounds are very soothing. So like crickets at night or ocean waves. So sounds of nature can be another form of sound healing that can help someone. But if they want to start listening to some of these modern instruments that are gaining so much traction, they can definitely listen to something like singing bowls for the heart chakra. So if you were to listen to some of these chakras are really popular for people. So like the root chakra, the heart chakra, those are great places to start. Just looking up crystal singing bowls for heart chakra or root chakra might be a really wonderful place to start. Jessica, did you have anything else you're thinking?
Oh, there's, as you said, the list is so long. It can be, again, your preference. If you have an interest in the chakra system and that's, you know, very important to your practice and you feel benefits from that, research the different chakras. The list is so long on all of those different playlists and individual tracks that are available. If you have interest in the cosmic tunings, which is, you know, a whole, we could probably have a whole nother podcast on that. There's so much out there. If you have a personal preference as something that is a part of your practice, just search for it in Spotify or YouTube and see what pops up and listen to it. You might be surprised. A, the amount of resources, and B, how healing, you know, simply just having, you know, something as simple as earbuds in can really be.
Yeah, I liked how you mentioned nature sounds, and I remember listening to the songs of a whale as a sound healing tape, and there is something so magical and so powerful as a whale singing. It's just, if you haven't, to our listeners, if you haven't listened to it, go and listen, like Google on Spotify or like search on Spotify for whale sounds and let me know what you think, because I think there's just something so beautiful and magical about that. Maybe because I love the ocean, but like you said,
Me
everyone's
too.
got different
It's a
preferences.
great tip.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Where can all of our listeners find your book if they want to learn more about sound healing?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah, so you can find our book, Seasons of Sound, Sound Healing for All of Life's Seasons, at first at our website, seasonsofsoundbook.com. You can also find it on Amazon if that's where you like to shop. And if you have any, I know we're in the States, you're located in Australia. If you ever have access issues, you guys can always email us too through the website. So you can contact me through my business, Sound for Stress, on all the platforms at Sound for Stress. And then Julie's amazing business, her yoga teacher trainings and her studio here in Texas is Soul Strong Yoga. And she's Soul Strong Yoga and on the platforms. And we're real friendly and kind of silly too. So we love to chat. If anybody ever wants to reach out and they have any questions or looking for a playlist recommendation, we'd love to connect.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much. And do you have any parting words for our listeners before we go? Is there anything that's your soul's calling to share?
Harmony, I have to, this is Julie, if you're listening, I have to add this. Jessica's gonna laugh. I'm obsessed with whales, specifically orca whales.
She is.
So we should talk about whales sometime, but I am sure that they are smarter than us. So we can train whales to understand us. But speaking of whale songs, we don't understand them. So it's like, who's smarter, right?
Yeah.
But I think whale sounds is a beautiful place to start. Humming is a really beautiful place to start. But if you do have a bowl, let's say someone gifted it to you or you thought it was so cute and you bought yourself, for example, a Tibetan singing bowl and you're listening and you don't know what to do with it, perhaps just one morning in your meditation practice or while you're sipping your cup of coffee or tea, just take a nice inhale in and then on the exhale, tap the bowl and let it fully play out and just do that 3 times. And that's a really wonderful way, we talked about entrainment earlier, to start seeing the healing effects of sound by aligning the breath and the sound. And again, letting that sound fully play out might be a really wonderful practice, just an easy way to start.
Beautiful. Thank you. That's a wonderful tip. You'll I'll get all my bowls out tomorrow and they'll be like bing bong bing. You might hear it all the way over in Texas.
We would love that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.